the top 5 best UFC fighters in every weight class, per my opinion. That's what I want to talk about today, guys. I'm not talking about UFC rankings nonsense or these BS 1 through 15. No, I'm talking about who I think, in order, are the best 5 fighters in every single weight class. The champion's not always going to be number 1 because I think that some fighters are better than the champion in some weight classes. So let's get right into it, boys. Starting off with the flyweight division. At the number 5 spot at flyweight, I have Tatsuro Taira. Now, he just dropped a decision to Brandon Royval, but there's no doubt that this guy is an absolute menace and the future of the flyweight division. I mean, this guy's well-rounded. He has good wrestling. He has decent striking. And the real ones know that the UFC was trying to put a fight together with this guy versus Kai Asakura in Japan if Asakura won the belt, which is still a possibility in the future, but I do have him as the 5th best flyweight in the division at the moment. At the number 4 spot, we got my boy Kai Kara-France. If you know, you know. He just stole all of Steve Erceg's hype. Steve Erceg was coming off of what I would call a win over Pantoja, and everybody was like, man, Erceg's going to destroy Kara-France. But Kara-France went in there, chinned him in the first round, and real ones know that Kara-France deserved the title shot over Kai Asakura, but the UFC is just trying to build the flyweight division, build a market in Japan. So, yeah, man, Kai Kara-France is really good. Not the best ground game, but when it comes to the striking, he is punch for punch the most powerful puncher at flyweight, and he's been a perennial contender in this division for a while. So I got him at the number 4 spot. Coming in at number 3 spot, I do have Brandon Royval. Brandon Royval's on a little bit of a run. He already dropped 2 losses to Pantoja, so for him to get a 3rd title shot is going to be tough. But he's coming off of a win over Tatsuro Taira, took his O, which was pretty impressive. And he's coming off a win over Brandon Moreno earlier in the year. But Brandon Royval, he's kind of, he's a crafty vet, as they call him, as Lucas Tracy says. Brandon Royval, absolutely a crafty vet. I mean, this guy has it all. He has knockout power. He has decent striking, decent jiu-jitsu. He's just like the jack of all trades, just good everywhere, And I have him number 3. He is the number 1 contender, but like I said, dropped 2 decisions to the champion, so I don't see him getting another title shot. Let's move on to the number 2 flyweight, in my opinion. Sorry about that. We got Brandon Moreno. I have Brandon Moreno at the number 2. And the reason I have him over Royval is, despite Royval beating him in the last fight, I think they're 1-1 now. I do still think that Brandon Moreno is a more capable fighter than Royval. I think he has better striking. I think he has better scrambles. Maybe Royval has a little bit more power. So, despite Royval winning a decision over Brandon Moreno at the beginning of the year, I think we saw a rejuvenated Brandon Moreno who just fraud-checked Almir Albazi. And yeah, man, I think Brandon Moreno still has it. He has good boxing. He has amazing scrambles. He has great cardio. So, former champion. And yeah, man, Brandon Moreno at number 2. And yeah, at number 1, it's no secret. It's going to be Alessandro Pantoja. I still think he's the best in the world at flyweight. He is the champion, so it would make sense. He has 2 wins over Moreno and 2 wins over Royval and a win over Kai Kara-France. I mean, this dude's just lapping the division. I do think his time will be up eventually soon because he's 34, edging on 35. But as of now, man, when it comes to striking, having a good chin, jiu-jitsu, putting it all together, nobody's better than Pantoja at flyweight, and that's why he's the champion. So, yeah, this is my opinion on the flyweight division, boys. So let's move on to the bantamweight division. For the number 5 spot at bantamweight, I have none other than Corey Sandhagen. Now, this might seem like a low ball, but when you see who I have above him, it'll make more sense. Corey Sandhagen, I believe, is 2-3 in his last 5. I will say I do think Corey Sandhagen's skills are a little overrated. People talk about this guy like he's going to be like the next freaking John Jones of bantamweight, and it's just not true, man. Like, Corey Sandhagen's great, but it seems like he tries to be Mr. Technical too much, and sometimes you just got to go in there and be a dog. And sometimes I feel like Corey Sandhagen don't have that dog in him, He's just trying to be a dork in there and run up the numbers with his little technical striking. Nah, all jokes aside, I like Corey Sandhagen, one of the best strikers at bantamweight. Underrated wrestling that he's developed late in his career, and his ground game, it's not the best. It's pretty good. Like, he doesn't really get too many submission wins, but overall, he's a complete mixed martial artist. He is an elite bantamweight, but I have him at the number 5 spot because whenever he came up to the big fights, man, against against Petr Yan, against Umar, he just can't seem to hit that next stride above them. So I have him at number 5. At the number 4 spot, we got the former champ O'Malley. Now, it's no secret O'Malley has had one of the easiest rises to the title out of any division we've ever seen. I mean, my guy went from fighting Chris Moutinho and Pedro Munoz all the way up to fighting Petr Yan. So the jump was all the way there, and then he arguably lost to Petr Yan. I do think he lost. But they gave him the decision. He fought Aljo for the title. He capitalized. And yeah, man, then he just got kind of fraud checked by Merab. Merab's wrestling outdone him at UFC 306. But O'Malley's still good. Probably still the best striker at bantamweight, the most dangerous striker. Lethal in his hands and fast. Definitely the fastest fighter at 135. His speed is unreal. So I still do have him at the number 4 spot. But I do think there's 3 fighters that are better than him in this division. And at number 3, I have my boy, Petr Yan. Now, Petr Yan's looking better than ever in 2024. He got a pretty solid win over Song Yadong and then followed it up recently with a dominant decision over Davison Figueiredo, who was on a run of his own at bantamweight. But Petr Yan shut that down. He said, no, I'm the real bantamweight champ. I'm coming back from my belt. Sit down, Davison Figueiredo. So, yeah, man, I have Petr Yan at the number 3 spot. Still really good in 2024. And as we enter the 2025, well, I don't know if he gets a title shot. I think the UFC is going to push for Merab, but Petr Yan's looking better than ever, man. I just don't think he can beat a guy like Merab. It's tough for Petr Yan, but we'll see. Maybe the MMA gods can give us what we want, which is Petr Yan as champion again in 2025. Either way, let's move on to the next one. Number 2 in the bantamweight division, in my opinion, is Merab Dvalishvili. Now, a lot of people might disagree with this. He is the champion, but I have him at number 2. When it comes to Merab, he has insane cardio, but outside of insane cardio, I think his striking's mid. I think his wrestling is good, but not amazing. It's very sloppy. And I think that his jiu-jitsu and like submission game is not the best. Merab's not submitted by anybody in the UFC. He's only knocked out Marlon Moraes, who was knocked out by everybody. He just kind of grinds you into a decision, and his cardio is so good that you can't really stop it. So he's really made his way all the way to the championship doing that. So can't really fault the guy. I do have him at the number 2 spot, just because I do not think he will be able to beat this guy whenever they fight. I have Umar Nurmagomedov at the top, number 1. Now, go ahead and call me a Umar Glazer. He's only beat one guy in the top 15, blah, 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 blah. I understand that he only has a win over Corey Sandhagen, but at the end of the day, he's undefeated. He comfortably beat Corey Sandhagen 50-45, I believe, didn't lose a single round. And I honestly think that Umar is just a better version of Merab. Sure, Merab's cardio might be a little bit better, but Umar is more dangerous in the striking. He's more dangerous threatening with submissions. He's probably faster because he's younger. So I just think Umar has the edge anywhere the fight goes against Merab. And if there's anybody in the division that could beat Merab and his like unlimited cardio, I do think it's going to be Umar Nurmagomedov. So I do have to put him above Merab. We shall see whenever they fight. It's an extremely intriguing matchup because of the style matchups between like the unlimited cardio wrestler in Merab versus the just technical maestro that is Umar, just good everywhere and honestly really good on the feet for a Dagestani, and he has good wrestling. So we'll see when the fight happens. It's the fight I want to see next, especially since Figueiredo lost. I do think that Umar deserves a shot over Petr Yan because Petr Yan got dominated by Merab. It's a fresh matchup, so make it happen in 2025 UFC. Let's move on to the featherweight division. My number 5 for the featherweight division, I have none other than Arnold Allen. Listen, I love Arnold Allen, one of my favorite fighters at featherweight. Dude's built like a fridge. Look at his physique. But yeah, Arnold Allen had a really close fight with Movsar Evloev, arguably won that fight. Had a very competitive fight with Prime Max Holloway at featherweight, which in hindsight was a really good look. And yeah, man, I forgot who he fought last. If it was Movsar or he got a win since then. But Arnold Allen, he's just kind of a jack of all trades. He's a really good striker. He's a decent grappler. And yeah, not the most power in the world, but he'll hang in there. He's a technical maestro on the feet. He'll out-jab you, out-box you, out-point you, and maybe win a decision against you. Oh yeah, he last fought Giga Chikadze, and he beat him pretty comfortably. So yeah, Arnold Allen in the number 5 spot. At the number 4, I have Movsar Evloev, who fights at this weekend at UFC 310 against Aljamain Sterling. Listen, Movsar is good, but he's a decision machine, and I do think that he lost to that fight to Arnold Allen. People are going to say I'm coping. It was a close fight, but I did have the edge going to Arnold Allen. But you know what? Close fights aren't robbery, so I'm gonna if I did say he got robbed, I'm gonna retract that. It wasn't a robbery. I just think that Arnold Allen won the fight, but I don't think it's impossible to see a side where Movsar won. Either way, this guy's a decision machine. Ever since he came to the UFC, he can't seem to get a finish. He's good, but I think people overrate like how dominant he is. He's not 50 or 30-26 in everybody, you know? He's winning fights, but you know, he's getting some decisions. He's not getting any finishes, and the fights are decently close. Some guys he's dominating, fair enough, but I have to have him at number 4. And despite him beating this guy, I have this guy above him. I have Diego Lopez above Movsar Evloev. You know what? There's a real argument if you value submission attempts over ground control that Diego Lopez beat Movsar Evloev on short notice. Now, granted, I did think that Movsar edged out that fight, but when you look at what they've done since then, I got to have Diego above him, man. Diego, since then, is 5-0. He's higher than Movsar in the rankings. He's finishing people and like knocking Brian Ortega out and waking him up in the same combination, finishing Sadiq Youssef. Like, this guy is super dangerous, finishing everybody. He goes for the finish. He's a killer. He's good on the ground. He's dangerous on the feet. He's good everywhere, man. I just think he's a notch above Movsar, and I would pick him to beat Movsar in a rematch in a full camp. But who knows? They're neck and neck at 3 and 4. You could honestly say they're tied as a fighter, but I have Diego Lopez slightly edging Movsar Evloev. Let's move on to the number 2 spot. I got my man Alexander Volkanovski. Even at 36 years old and coming off of 2 KO losses, I still think he's the second best featherweight in the division. Just his striking is leaps and bounds ahead of the guys below him. Like, he smokes any of these guys in the striking, and I don't think any of these guys are going to be able to out-grapple Volk. So unless they KO him on the feet, I think these guys are slim pickings for Volkanovski, even at 36 years old. He's just that dang good. He just happened to fight the 2 of the greatest fighters ever in Ilya Topuria and Makhachev back-to-back. And yeah, it's unfortunate for Volk. I'd like to see him get another win before he goes ahead and faces a guy like Topuria again, because there's just no aura or like intrigue in that matchup, being that Topuria just knocked him out and then knocked out Holloway. So it's like, what do you really do for Volk, you know? I'd like to see him fight Lopez in Australia. It's a good fight, and winner can get a title shot. Either way, at the number 1 spot, it's pretty obvious. Ilya Topuria. I think skill for skill, this guy's the best featherweight we've ever seen, over Jose Aldo, over Volkanovski, over Max Holloway. I'm not saying he has the best resume and he's the greatest. I'm saying he's the most skilled. Dude has unreal jiu-jitsu, unreal boxing, the best boxing in the UFC, and he's just so dangerous everywhere. He's not fighting you to like win a pitter-pat decision. No, he's fighting you to finish you. Most guys do not make it to the final bell with Ilya Topuria. Shout out to Josh Emmett. How good is Josh Emmett's chin? If we, in hindsight, he's the first guy to KO Max Holloway. He just KO'd Max Holloway and Volkanovski back-to-back, which single-handedly might be the most impressive back-to-back wins in UFC history. Some people could say that. Either way, it's clear Ilya Topuria is leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the division. I think he beats all of these guys soundly, so obviously you got to have him at number 1, and he's the champion for a reason. Let's move on to lightweight guys. In the lightweight division, at number 5, I got my man Maximus Holloway. Now, Max Holloway, I did not include him at featherweight because he did say he's moving up to lightweight, and he's fought 2 times at lightweight now against Poirier and against Gaethje, and he looked really good in his Gaethje fight at UFC 300. I know it's easy to have recency bias and say that Max Holloway is overrated. He just got cooked by Ilya Topuria. He was never good, blah, blah, blah. But listen, man, show some respect to my boy Jerome Max Holloway. I still think he's one of the top dogs at lightweight, and he arguably is either the best or the second best striker behind Islam Makhachev in this division. So, yeah, I think there's some fun matchups to be made for Max Holloway in the lightweight division, but I do have him at number 5 because there are some killers above him and guys that have already beat him. And speaking of guys that have beaten Max Holloway twice, Dustin Poirier I have at number 4. Listen, Dustin Poirier put on an instant classic with Islam Makhachev, arguably looked the best he's ever looked in a long time, had improved takedown defense against Islam, lasted to the 5th round. Actually, even though he got outboxed, he still damaged Islam's face on the feet, hung in there the whole fight. And yeah, man, Dustin Poirier looked primed against Islam Makhachev at UFC 302 despite getting submitted in the 5th round. Fun fact, if you didn't know, Dustin Poirier has been submitted in all 3 of his title fights, so that's unfortunate for him. But I do have him at the number 4 spot. Dustin Poirier is a dog. He got the best ghillie in the game, as you know. He has the best boxing in the lightweight division, and he has the best, probably the most powerful out of any lightweight right now. So yeah, I got to have him at the number 4 spot. At the number 3 spot, one of the guys who choked him out, we got Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Charles Oliveira, definitely in the number 3 spot. We saw patient Charles and leveled up Charles in the Michael Chandler 2 fight. Charles looked better than ever. Even at 35 years old, 15 years into his UFC career, this guy is still evolving, still dangerous on the ground and the feet. So for the longevity of Charles needs to be studied. This guy's been on top for a long time. And yet, maybe not on top for a long time, but he's been like a really good fighter for a long time. He's been around the UFC since 2010. So yeah, to see him put it all together and become champion, and now that he's lost the belt, he's still showing that he can make improvements, is quite impressive. From jiu-jitsu to striking to wrestling, I think Charles is number 3 in this division. There's 2 guys ahead of him that have both beat him. that I have to put Arman Tsarukyan at the number 2 spot. Listen, Arman Tsarukyan, first of all, this guy's jacked and chiseled out of stone. One of the best physiques in the UFC. Arman Tsarukyan narrowly beat Charles Oliveira whenever they fought. And it was a good fight, but Arman did eke out the decision. I think if it was a 5-round fight, that could have got hairy for Arman with Charles threatening with submissions. Either way, he beat Charles Oliveira. He's on like a 5 or 6 fight win streak, and he is up next to fight Islam Makhachev. And when we talk about pure wrestling, Arman Tsarukyan might be the best pure wrestler in the entire division. Just his wrestling and his scrambles are amazing, but he lacks a lot of finishing ability. Listen, I know Arman just KO'd Beneil Dariush, and he KO'd Joel Alvarez back in the day, but outside of that, man, he's not really finishing anybody. He's fighting to decision a lot. Doesn't really have any submissions. I don't think Arman Tsarukyan has a single submission win in the UFC. Somebody fact check me. If he does, it has to only be one. He's good. He's just, he's number 2. I don't think he's as good as number 1. And when we're talking about number 1, before I go to number 1, Arman Tsarukyan has the best kicks in the division. This dude's so flexible. His axe kicks and his kicks in general are dangerous. So, but number 1, Islam Makhachev, the pound-for-pound number 1 fighter in the world right now, rightfully so. This guy, skill for skill, might be the best fighter we've ever seen. Him versus Topuria is the matchup I want to see in 2025 if he gets past Arman, which I do think he will. But he also might want to go up to welterweight depending on who has the belt. I do not think he'll fight Bilal, but yeah, man. Islam Makhachev, just from the striking to the head kicks to the jiu-jitsu to the wrestling to the positions, like this guy has it all, the total package, and that's why he's on top of the division. He's on a 14-fight win streak. Just 3 fights away from breaking Anderson Silva's record. He's about to get the most title defenses in lightweight history if he defeats Arman at UFC 311, if they fight, because apparently he hasn't gotten the contract yet. But yeah, man, Islam Makhachev, one of the most well-rounded fighters we've ever seen in the UFC, so he's obviously number 1. He's a champion of lightweight, so yeah, I think this list for lightweight makes sense. Let's move on to the welterweight division, boys. At welterweight, the number 5 spot, I have Kamaru, the Nigerian Nightmare Usman. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. And he is 37 years old, and his knees are wobbling, cobbling more than ever. But listen, he did look great against Hamzat at middleweight a year ago. But how's he going to look coming back after a year layoff, not cutting to the welterweight division in a long time and coming off a 3-loss streak where his confidence is going to be an all-time low. So I still think Usman is top 5 at welterweight in terms of skill, but I do think he's going to fall off soon if you watched my video yesterday. But I still think Kamaru Usman, if he shows up in prime form, can beat a lot, if not all of these welterweights, man. He's still good, but Father Time's undefeated. So let's see. So I have Usman at number 5. At the number 4 spot, I have my boy Jack Della Maddalena, the Australian welterweight boxer who finished Gilbert Burns earlier in the year. Now, I will say in that fight, it was getting a little bit hairy for him. Gilbert Burns had some good moments and arguably stole a round or 2 off of Jack, but he ended up getting the finish and showed good ground game against Gilbert in the 3rd round. But yeah, man, I have him at number 4 above Usman. I just feel like his striking is so dangerous. He does have underrated jiu-jitsu, and sometimes he could perform to the level of his opponent. Like whenever he fought Basil Hafez, I think he's way better than Basil Hafez, but for whatever reason, he narrowly beat him. I don't know. I can't explain it. If you know, you know. But JDM at the number 4 spot over Usman. I just feel like his striking is way better, and his grappling's underrated. So let's move on to the 3rd spot. I have my boy Leon Edwards. That's 9 fights in a row, bruv. Leon Edwards at the number 3. He just lost the belt to Bilal Muhammad. But Leon Edwards, although he never can seem to pull the trigger, he is one of the best welterweights in the world, having 2 wins over Kamaru Usman, a head kick, and then a comfortable decision win in the 3rd fight. And even in the Bilal fight, he showed glimpses. Like he won a round. I think he had Bilal's back nearly the entire round. And then the 5th round, he got on top of Bilal, was raining down elbows. He has moments where he just chooses to lose, and out of nowhere he's like, you know what, let me win the fight. It's weird, man. Leon's so good. He's a tactician on the feet. He's got an underrated wrestling game. Not much of a jiu-jitsu game, but if he takes your back, he's going to ride you out for the rest of the round, I believe. So yeah, I have Leon Edwards, and probably the best technical striker in the division. And yeah, I have him at number 3. So at number 2, guys, I'm going to have Bilal Muhammad. Bilal Muhammad, he is well-rounded, and he does have an underrated resume. He has decent striking. He has good wrestling, good takedowns, decent control. But for Bilal, for me, the thing that he's lacking is finishing ability. He has no knockout power. Yes, he finished Sean Brady, but Sean Brady's a grappler. Of course, he was going to get finished on the feet eventually. And then he has no submission ability. You never see Bilal really threatening submissions. It's kind of the same thing with Bilal. It's just jab, jab, go forward, throw a kick here and there, take you down over and over, control you on the ground, don't try to finish the fight, and coast. I kind of just feel like that's Bilal's whole style. and he's good enough to where it gave him champion, but he's not finishing guys. And for me, if you're not finishing guys, you can't be at my number one. And speaking of finishing, here comes the glaze, boys. Here comes the boys in the comments saying he's overrated. Oh, wait. Let me bring Bilal back. Shavkat Rakhmonov, number one. Now, a lot of guys have been calling Shavkat undefeated, but let me ask you guys, how many fighters you know coming into the UFC with 12 fights and 12 finishes, and then in the UFC, he goes on to finish 6 more guys in a row, and he's still undefeated and finished every single fight? How can you call this guy overrated? Sure, he doesn't move his head off the center line, and he can get punished for that. But what you think Bilal is going to punish Shavkat for not moving his head off the center line? What is Bilal going to do? Knock him out? Bilal pillow hands? You think Ian Gary's going to knock this guy out? No, this guy's going to bully his way through Ian Gary, and then he's going to steal the belt off of Bilal, and then he's going to parade around the freaking UFC PI with the belt saying, "Come take it off me, son." Either way, I do have Shavkat Rakhmonov at number one. I think he's the best welterweight in the world over Bilal Muhammad. I think when they fight, he's going to take the belt. I think he's going to beat Ian Gary this weekend. Just his pressure and just like the smothering style of his fight style is insane. Like, this guy pressures you and beats you down until you give up, and then he'll either bully you into a submission or he'll get a TKO victory. So say what you want about his best win being a 41-year-old wonder boy or how he doesn't fight often enough. I still think he's the best welterweight, and yes, 100% he needs to fight more to prove that. A lot of the reason why this guy's been called overrated is because he doesn't fight often enough. That is a fair criticism, but I do still have him as the best welterweight in the world. There's something to be said about a guy who's made it to the top of the division and has finished every single fight. So, yeah, man, I have Shavkat at the number one. I think he will become the champion. Let's move on to the middleweight division. In middleweight, guys, I have number 5 at Robert Whittaker. Now, recently, Whittaker seems to be going through a string of like win 1, lose 1, win 2, lose 1, kind of like that. He's had trouble stringing like a good win streak together. He seems to either win 1, lose 1, or win 2, lose 1. And it's no secret. He just fought Khamzat Chimaev, got destroyed on the ground, but that just goes to show how good Khamzat is, man, because Robert Whittaker has some of the best anti-jiu-jitsu and anti-wrestling in the middleweight division. And yeah, he was the middleweight champion, had a title defense or two, I forget how many, and he's just been a perennial contender forever. But recently, I feel like his skills have took a dip. I know he looked in prime form against Ikram Aliskerov, but that was Ikram Aliskerov on short notice. And yeah, man, I got to have Whittaker at the 5 spot just because, you know, he struggled to put together a win streak. And this might be controversial, and honestly, you could interchange these guys. I wouldn't hate it. Israel Adesanya at the 4 spot. You could put Adesanya at 5 and put Whittaker at 4, considering that Adesanya is 1-3 in his last 5. But Adesanya did look good in his last fight against Dricus. He held in the zone in the striking, and he was tagging up Dricus in some times in the fight. But eventually, Dricus did get to him and secure a rear naked choke in the 4th round. I do think Adesanya is going to fall off soon, but he does have 2 wins over Robert Whittaker. I know, MMA math, how exciting. And yeah, man, he's still decent. I do think he's going to fall off soon, but I still have him as the number 4 best middleweight in the division as of now. We'll see how he performs in his next fight. Let's move on to number 3. I have Sean Strickland. I have Sean Strickland, who's being an absolute Karen about waiting for a title shot. Either way, I still think he's the number 3 middleweight. He absolutely dominated Izzy on the feet. Pillar to post, a 49-46 decision, even 50-45 in some people's eyes, and he knocked down Izzy in the 1st round. And then he beat Paulo Costa. He had a razor-close decision that arguably could have went to him against Dricus. And he has the wins over Nasruddin and Mavov. Like, Sean Strickland's good, and he's really good because he literally just has a Philly show and throws teeps the entire fight and doesn't use any grappling or wrestling. He just uses his wrestling to get back up from the ground, but he just fights the same every fight. But hey, man, it's worked for him. He's made it all the way to champion, but I do have him at the number 3 spot in the division. I think there's 2 guys that are better than him. And next up on this list, we got Dricus du Plessis, the champion. I have him as the 2nd best middleweight in the world right now. Yeah, there's one guy ahead of him, and I think you guys know who it is. But Dricus, he's found a way to Looney Tunes his way to the championship. And I think the thing about Dricus that makes him so good is that he has underrated cardio. Despite looking like he's tired and looking like he's just winging punches everywhere, this guy has insane cardio. He never slows down. He's dangerous in the 1st round as well as the 5th round. He's always looking for the finish, always looking to bully you and just out cardio you. And then, yeah, like just bullying you to a finish. That's what he's done his whole career, and he's made it all the way to championship status. Undefeated in the UFC, just finished Israel Adesanya after beating Sean Strickland to get the belt. So yeah, I got to have Dricus at number 2. But at the number 1 spot, guys, come on, you know who it is. And a lot of people are going to call me a glazer, Khamzat Chimaev. I'm sorry, guys. I don't think anybody beats Khamzat at middleweight. The way he looked, Khamzat, Dr. Khamzat, whatever you want to call him, the way he looked against Dricus du Plessis was absolutely, against Robert Whittaker was absolutely insane. He took Robert Whittaker down, grabbed his face, and face cranked him until his teeth popped out. Fair enough, Whittaker had teeth issues, but it just showed me, man, it doesn't matter. People were touting how good Whittaker's anti-grappling was, and I was like, man, it's not going to matter. Khamzat's going to take him down and submit him. I had a whole video on this, and it got a lot of hate, but I was right. And at the end of the day, this guy has the best wrestling, the most dominant wrestling we've ever seen in the UFC, and I really do believe that he'll do the same thing to Dricus. Maybe Dricus will last a little bit longer than Robert Whittaker, but I think at the end of the day, the result will be the same. Khamzat Chimaev will take down Dricus du Plessis and submit him and become the middleweight champion. And I think he has underrated striking. Listen, a lot of people want to talk about this guy's grappling. He has underrated striking. He's KO'd Gerald Mearshart on the feet with one punch in 17 seconds. He brawled with Gilbert Burns, and fair enough, he was sloppy in moments, but he did knock down Gilbert Burns and almost get a finish. And yeah, that was a good showcase of his striking. And I also think I'll do one up even better. Some more glazing for Khamzat. I also think he has underrated cardio. People are going to say, oh, he always gets sick. This guy's cardio is cooked. If you can get past the first round, you're done. Like, I don't necessarily think that if Dricus gets to the second round that it's over for Khamzat. Sure, his chances of winning go down significantly than the first round, but I don't think it's like the end of the fight just if it goes into the second round, whenever he fights Dricus. Either way, I think Khamzat's the best middleweight in the world right now. I think he's the most dangerous middleweight, so I do have him at number 1. Shout out to all the glazing I just did of my boy Khamzat. Let's move on to the light heavyweight division. At the number 5 spot, I have Jamal Hill. Now, he's lucky I put him in the top 5. Not going to lie, I wanted to drop Jamal Hill out of the top 5. Listen, his best win is a retired 42-year-old Glover Teixeira who was coming off a war with Yuri, and he took a lot of damage in that fight. And then outside of that, Jamal Hill's only win in the top 10 is who? Johnny Walker? That's what we're grabbing at? Thiago Santos? Like a 40-year-old Thiago Santos that he struggled against? I just think Jamal Hill is a little overrated. He gets a little too much credit for that Glover win. Fair enough, it's Glover, but he was 42 coming off a war, and he got KO'd by Pereira, and ever since then, all he's been doing is talking on Twitter. So I think this guy needs to put up or shut up. He needs to win a fight. And yeah, man, I do have him in the top 5 at light heavyweight, but he's hanging on by a thread. If he loses his fight against Yuri, he's dropping out of my top 5. Let's move on to the number 4. And this is going to seem like a lot of people are going to disagree with this one, but I have Khalil Roundtree at number 4. Listen, I think if Khalil Roundtree fought Jamal Hill, he'd piece him up and finish him. That's what I think. I think Khalil Roundtree is a better mixed martial artist. He's a better striker. He comes into fights with better shape, better cardio than Jamal Hill. And I just think Khalil is a better fighter. And until I see Jamal prove something outside of talking on Twitter, I'm going to have Khalil over him. And yeah, we'll see what happens in the Yuri fight. But Khalil Roundtree looked really good against Pereira. Lasted to the 4th round. I know that's crazy to say lasted, but that's how good Pereira is. Khalil Roundtree in the 4th round. Pereira went in the Matrix and finished him. So, yeah, it is what it is. But he did drop Pereira with, I think, a spinning elbow and hit him with a head kick at one point. And he was holding his own in those first 2 rounds until Pereira took over. So, shout out to Khalil Roundtree. I think he's going to have a good resurgence and come back and maybe fight for the title again. We will see. But I do have him at my number 4 spot. At the number 3, guys, I have the crafty vet himself, Jan Blachowicz. Now, Jan Blachowicz, say what you want about him. He's nearly 42, but this guy is the definition of a crafty vet. Just ask Lucas Tracy. He'll tell you. Jan Blachowicz, coming off a shoulder surgery. I still think he's the number 3 best light heavyweight in the world right now. I think if you put him in there against Jamal Hill, he would win. He had the closest fight with Alex Pereira in the light heavyweight division. Arguably beat him in a lot of people's eyes, but he ended up losing the decision, and he's been injured since. And yeah, man, I think crafty old vet Jan's going to come back, and he might win a couple fights. And who knows, he might fight for the title again. Either way, I have him at the number 3 spot. He has some of the best striking in the division outside of Alex Pereira. He has solid grappling. So, yeah, got to have the crafty vet Jan at number 3. At the number 2 spot, I have Alex Pereira. Now, I've recently shifted my opinion on this, guys. At first, I did have Poatan beating Magomed Ankalaev, but the longer the fight stalls out, the more I'm favoring Ankalaev. Alex Pereira is only getting older. He's only racking up more injuries. He's going to be 38 next year. And the longer we prolong this Ankalaev fight, the more it benefits Ankalaev, who's only 32, is in his absolute prime, coming off of not the best performance against Rakic, but coming off a win over Rakic. He's on like a 9-10 fight unbeaten streak in the light heavyweight division. Just looking promising, man. And I think whenever Alex fights this guy, he's going to be nearly 38. And I think Father Time is undefeated. Eventually, you're going to slow down. Eventually, your reflexes are not going to be what they used to be. And yeah, man, if this was Alex Pereira and his like absolute, like if this was Alex Pereira at the top of light heavyweight and he was like 32, I'd 100% pick him. But like to be the #1 light heavyweight. But right now, with him being 38, I know he's piecing up guys, but he's beating guys like Yuri. He's beating guys like Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree. Good, decent wins, but when we're talking about a complete mixed martial artist, I got to have Magomed Ankalaev at #1. This guy has it all. I do think the idea that he's like a Dagestani like destructor on the ground is a little overrated, but when it comes to mixing the martial arts, he's the best in the entire division, in my opinion. He can wrestle you. He can knock you out on the feet. He has really good underrated striking. And yeah, man, I think that if he goes into the Alex fight and he mixes in his wrestling, I think he'll win a decision against Alex and maybe even get him out of there in the late rounds, depending on how the fight goes. But if this guy goes in the fight with Alex and stands with him and tries to trade, he will 100% get KO'd. I honestly wouldn't mind these guys being tied for #1. Having Alex and Magomed at #1 for the light heavyweight division, just because they're so close, and I don't really know who's going to win the fight. For me, it's like a 50-50 fight, but I'm edging towards Ankalaev the longer the fight takes to happen because Alex is getting older, as I said. But yeah, Magomed Ankalaev at #1 and Alex at #2. This is my light heavyweight list, guys. Let's go on to the big bruisers, the heavyweight division. At the #5 spot for heavyweight, I have the big Russian bruiser himself, Sergey Pavlovich. Sergey Pavlovich, he's on a recent downfall a little bit. He got knocked out and kind of fraud checked by Tom Aspinall, and then he got pieced up for 3 rounds by Alexander Volkov, who had like a y'all must have forgot type of performance over him. So Sergey Pavlovich, before those 2 losses, he was on a 6-fight first-round finish streak, which is absolutely insane. This guy's a Russian nightmare, throws Russian bombs, and yeah, man, if you get hit by this guy, he will probably TKO you on the ground if he lands a clean shot. But I do have him at the #5 spot. He's dangerous, but he's not very well-rounded. He's pretty one-dimensional, a boxer, not really any grappling. So I do have him at the #5 spot. Let's go on to the #4 spot, the guy who just pieced him up. Kind of having a resurgence in his career. I got to put Volkov at the নম্ber 4 spot. Volkov, he's looking good recently. He did get smoked by Tom Aspinall, and he's about to rematch Cyril Gane at UFC 310. And I do think he's going to lose again to Cyril Gane, but we'll see, man. It was a close first fight. I have him at the #4 spot. Let's move on to the #3 spot. I got Gelton Almeida. Gelton Almeida, the #3 heavyweight in the world, in my opinion. Yeah, man, this guy's grappling's on another level. I think he's by far the best grappler in the heavyweight division. And even if he were to get somebody like Aspinall down, he might present a threat to submit him on the ground. This guy's grappling so good. We don't really get to see much of his striking, but I think he's dangerous, and I think he could submit a guy like Volkov. I think he could submit a guy like Pavlovich. So I do have him at my #3 spot, despite losing the blades. He was looking amazing in that fight and just kind of got caught going on a takedown and didn't let it go, and he got TKO because of it. But #3, Gelton Almeida. At the #2 spot, I have I just revealed #1. I have John Jones. John Jones at heavyweight, #2. He just finished a 42-year-old Stipe, and in his other heavyweight fight, he finished tentative and scared Cyril Gane, who seemed like he didn't want to be there. Don't get me wrong, John Jones is good. Skill for skill, he's definitely the best fighter in the heavyweight division. But if we're talking about danger factor and who would actually win in a fight, I don't think he's #1. I think he's #2. He's good, but he's 37 years old. He's looking slower than ever. And he did look good against Stipe, but it's a 42-year-old retired firefighter. So I got to put none other than Tommy Aspinall at #1, guys. Come on. You knew it was coming. Tom Aspinall at the #1 spot. There's nobody better than him at heavyweight right now, in my opinion. Just the speed, the boxing, the jiu-jitsu, like the light on his feet. This guy's going to be insanely hard to beat. The one-shot knockout power. I mean, he has the shortest fight average UFC time in history with 2 minutes and 2 seconds. I think all of his UFC finishes are like shorter than John's fight with Stipe. I'm not sure if that's true. Somebody fact check that. Either way, I have Tom Aspinall at the #1 spot. And making this heavyweight list, I just noticed that I left out Cyril Gane. So if I'm being honest, we could push everybody down. You can knock Sergey Pavlovich out of the 5 spot, put Volkov in the 5, and then put Gane to the 4. And this list would be fair. I did forget Gane. My mistake, guys. Either way, this is my top 5 of every single division. Like, in my opinion, in order, who are the best 5 fighters in every division. This is my rankings, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I think this is the longest video on my channel. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys had a good day today. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Shout out to all the channel members. Shout out to all the people that come in the stream, like, comment, subs, everybody. Appreciate you all. I'm out, guys. Peace.